Create with Franz, Sidney. Hello everyone, welcome to Create with Franz. We are today doing episode 38 and we have an amazing guest. Coming all the way from Provo, Utah, we have David Butler, who is a corporate trainer and a consultant, but also a lawyer and a novelist. So that's going to be interesting to see how David puts together all these things and manages to sleep in the night. So hello, David, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Franz. Thank you very much for having me. Congratulations on 38 episodes. That's very exciting.
I know, right? Did you know that most people start the episodes and by number 5 and number 6, they give up?
Yeah, I think that's true for most creative enterprises. I know a lot of independent novelists, for example, who put out one book and it's disappointing how many it sells, right? And so it's too hard. They just stop.
Too bad. That's not going to happen to me. I love broadcasting and I love speaking to our amazing audience. And as you know, our audience is all about mindfulness, mental wellness, art, and creativity. So how can these things help us to have a really good life? And I hear that you've done really well. We'll put it together, earning with whatever job you have, and you even have free. So that's very good. But you even have time for writing novels. Tell us a little bit about these novels. Would you write? Just, fill the space.
Yeah, I write science fiction and fantasy. This is really the thing I always wanted to do. When I was 8 years old, my father went to an academic conference and he came back and gave everyone presents. And the present he gave me was the 25th anniversary Silver Jubilee paperback box set of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit with covers by Darrell K. Sweet. And I actually was being homeschooled that year. So I just went to bed and stayed in bed for the whole week and read the books front to back. And I've never been the same since. So I always thought as a kid that's what I would end up doing, that I would write and that I would specifically be Tolkien. And I think I'm not alone in having that kind of vision. But life is complicated and I chickened out. So I went to I got a university degree, and as I was in my last year and finishing up, I wanted to get married, and the woman who was going to be my wife, I think, didn't really want to be poor, which is reasonable, That's a reasonable preference, and so so instead of trying to make a living writing science fiction novels, I went to law school. And so it wasn't until 2010. So I had 11 years of legal career under my belt before I had an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to take a couple of years and try full time to do this novelist thing. So fast forward to where I am now. I've got my 10th traditionally published novel came out in February. I've got also 4 novels that are published in the indie space and a series of novellas. I still do a little bit of legal practice. I'm still admitted in the New York bar. I've even been paid in 2021. I have received money for legal services. But my main making a living gig now is corporate trainer. I teach finance skills to large company employees. Tonight, I'll be teaching a 4-hour class to employees of the international engineering firm Jacobs. Tomorrow, I teach a class to employees of the life insurance company Lincoln Financial. So I write. So what I really want to be known for, when I'm dead, people go, "Oh yeah, Dave Butler." I don't want them to say he was a corporate trainer and he was a consultant and stuff. I want them to say, "Oh, I read his books," right? So 14 novels. I won the Dragon Award for Alternate History last year. I've won the Association for Mormon Letters Award for Novel and the Whitney Award for Speculative Fiction. And I have yet to produce anything like a bestseller. But like you, I'm not giving up. I'll keep at it until I'm dead.
Wow, what a great introduction. Thank you. That was amazing. You're going to have to tell us exactly about the type of novels, what is your subject, your themes, what do you write, what do you like talking about?
All right, well, let me tell you about them specifically. So my sort of, I guess, flagship series is called The Witchy War. Book 1 is Witchy Eye. This is this series, the first 2 books are both finalists for the Dragon Award. Book 3 won the Dragon Award in 2020. This is what it really is a kind of epic fantasy, okay? And in the same way that Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is a deeply English exploration, an English and Christian exploration of Tolkien's personal English and Christian mythology, this is my exploration of my deeply American personal and Christian mythology. And it's got alternate history, it's got some romance elements, it's a quest story, it's got some fairy tale kind of stuff in it. It's about a young woman named Sarah, who is a talented hexer, spellcaster. She is also smart and fiercely independent and loyal and paranoid and xenophobic and kind of mean. And on the day of the tobacco fair in 1815, she takes the family young'uns down to Nashville to sell the family crop, and Imperial Army officers try to kidnap her because it turns out that she is not who she thinks she is. This is a very classic kind of princess fairy tale story. She's the secret daughter of the dead empress, Mad Hannah Penn, and her uncle, the Emperor Thomas Penn, who's a usurper, has discovered that she is alive and is therefore a threat to his wealth and power and wants her dead. So it's the story about Sarah sort of gathering her mother's and father's retainers around her, recovering her father's throne and her mother's wealth, and rescuing the two. She's one of triplets, so the 2 siblings she never knew she had. The 4th book, Serpent Daughter, came out last fall. The next thing I need to write is book 5, Serpent Mother, which I should start here week after next, probably. That's my biggest series. I've got 2 books co-written with Aaron Michael Ritchie, and the first book's called The Cunning Man, and the second is The Jupiter Knife. And these are set in 1935, and they are about a sugar beet farmer named Hiram Woolley, who is also practices the not only learned farming skills from his grandma Hetty, who raised him, but also learned Grandma Hetty's traditional magical lore, and uses that traditional magical lore to battle the evils of the Great Depression. So in book 1, he learns that the mine is shut down because of not just a family squabble among the owners, but because of a demon that's living at the bottom of the mine, something that may or may not be a fallen angel. It's about his battle against that demon. And in book 2, he deals with this is a little bit spoilers, but battles a werewolf cult. So these are set in Great Depression rural Utah. So those are my 2 sort of biggest current projects. I've got other things. I've got a dystopian series. I've got a steampunk novel called City of the Saints. I've got a book called In the Palace of Shadow and Joy, which is sort of like Thieves' World meets the Mos Eisley Cantina, about an epic poet and a voracious reader, a fierce autodidact, self-improving thug who are trying to make a living in a city completely run by mercenaries. So that's kind of my a broad view of my novels, Franz.
That's amazing. I think you're gonna be so busy just thinking about these people and the structure and who's talking to who, and you probably have a tons of post-it notes everywhere of what's gonna happen, and there has to be some logic in all this, right? So what keeps you more awake at night? Is it writing down these novels or just life? I mean, how do you find the space, the compartment in your brain to organize, because I know, having written a novel myself which was never published, how much thinking there is. There is a formula as well for writing a book that is really capturing, and so I don't know, I have probably 1,000 questions, but where do you start, really?
So I don't know that it is organized or compartmentalized. I actually, the opening sequence to Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones goes in and steals the little golden head, and then he runs, right? And I actually feel like the part where he runs. So, he has to jump over the crevasse, and the guy stole the whip, and he has to beg him for the whip back. And then there's spiders, and there's a boulder is gonna squash him, and then there's poison darts. Ugh. So I feel like that. I write things down. I have a calendar. I work very hard not to miss deadlines or show up, not show up at a professional obligation. And I mean, above all else, professionalism as a corporate trainer, consultant, lawyer, or novelist means doing what you said you would do, right? It means delivering. There are things that I don't do that I think people that consume potentially a lot of time. I haven't really watched a professional sports game in, I think, more than a decade. It might be longer than that. It might literally the last professional sports matches I recall watching was the Utah Jazz versus Chicago Bulls playoffs when I was a summer associate at Clifford Chance. So was that 1998 maybe? Just don't do it. So I get a lot done, but I get a lot done by doing sort of, I think, only the things that I choose or that I want to do. And I avoid failing by writing everything down pretty obsessively. I keep a running to-do list, which I prioritize by, coloring, right? and a calendar to make sure I don't drop any obligations. But I wouldn't say it's compartmentalized at all. In fact, one of the challenges for me is between projects, it's very hard to instantly turn one off mentally and turn the other on. And that doesn't matter so much for corporate trainer, because corporate trainer is the kind of thing where, look, you start at 6 p.m. and if you aren't there, then you don't get paid. So you just do it. It's a lot harder, or it's more of a problem when you're talking about writing novels, right? Because especially if it's a new project where there's no deadline and no one's waiting for it. The truth is, you could just go to sleep or go for a walk or watch a rugby game if you wanted to or whatever, right? And so you have to find some way to make yourself turn that switch on. I'm not very good at that. So deadlines really help me. Being in traditional publishing, having an editor who will pay me money for turning books in on time, having a calendar where the book is supposed to come out in June of next year, and I know that, and I know therefore I have to turn in the book by June of this year, is very helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You want to be super organized, and I think a lot of people who do art, writing, etc. are not very organized. They're all over the place, very spread, and they're not getting consistent results. And it does help when you start thinking, what's the end of this? What is the book for? Who is the target client? Who's going to read it? So what do they expect? What is the structure? How is that going to work? And then you start thinking, okay, if I'm publishing in a year, by this time I have to have a layout, by that time before I have... So you have to really divide it and have a precise goal and say... So it's not just creativity, isn't it? And yet it's very important for the mind to do this sort of work, because obviously, let's say it, Dave, you would not be doing all this if you didn't love it. So here's a question: what is it you really love about coming out with these novels?
Actually, let me rewind and comment on a couple things you said there. So it's funny. Here's this complete trivia. This is pure trivia. I can't remember. Your podcast includes video, right? People can see the video, or is it just audio?
Well, we are recording this as a podcast, but we're also on video. So if you want to keep the video later on, we can keep the video and use it. So that's fine. Well, it's absolutely fine.
I'm going to show you a little something. So you said it's important to know what the end is, right? This is one of the classic Stephen R. Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit number 1 was, I don't know if you've read this book, begin with the end in mind, right? Yeah. So I don't know if I told you this before, Franz, but actually this house that Emily and I own is the original 1958 Stephen and Sandra Covey home that they built. And this room that I'm in right now is the only room that's never been refinished, and it's Stephen's office. So you're looking right now at Stephen R. Covey's original. It's got all my junk in it, so I'm sure it was much needed. But if you can see, that's Stephen R. Covey's green shag carpet, and there's his lumpy plaster style, popcorn style plaster ceilings, and his kind of rickety wooden walls. This room was built in 1958 by Stephen R. Covey, and it has never been remodeled. So that's just some funny trivia, just because you said what you said. But I like what you said. Oh, and now my camera doesn't want to go. Oh, I see what he did. Let me say something slightly different, which I say to myself all the time. I try to do not the thing that I want to do, but the thing that I want to have done. The thing that getting up tomorrow, I would really wish that I did today. Because it's very easy it's an easy thing to choose what's good over what's bad, right? Usually. The harder part is choosing the best thing over other good things, right? And this is super easy with even with just novels, right? People will, I should do some more research. That's probably good. But if you don't write the book, there's no book. So the best thing is you got to get started writing the book, right? So I try to choose the thing that, I say try because I fail a lot, right? But that's my principle. I try to choose the thing that I want to have done. Now, what do I love about writing novels? That's a really good question. I actually like the writing experience. I like doing the writing. It is a kind of it is a struggle. There's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of walls that seem really big until you start climbing them, and then you realize you can do it. It's just work. But every new draft, every revision just looks like an insurmountable wall. But the work is fun. You're pulling an image out of the stone. I love that. I like knowing that I will leave behind after me something more than just memories. There will be words, right? There'll be ideas. So I like engaging in the conversation of Western civilization and attempting to have an impact on the culture that way. It is wonderful to meet strangers who come up and say, "Oh, you're that guy. I read your book and I thought it was really great. When is the next one coming out?" That doesn't happen to me on a daily basis. It has happened, and it's pretty fantastic. Especially when I was young, I was a huge reader of fiction. I read a lot more nonfiction now. Another great thing is some people who are now, I don't want to say peers, but they're swimming in the same water that I am. We're writing novels. We're young novelists when I was 12 and reading their first books. My favorite living novelist is a guy named Tim Powers, who wrote Declare and The Anubis Gates and The Stress of Her Regard. I'm on a podcast with him on Wednesday. I've met Tim Powers. It's like, look, Tolkien's my favorite writer, but Tolkien's dead. I have to wait to meet him, right? But Tim Powers, I get to hang out with. This is a guy who, is kind of a hero to me. So So those are all great things. I also love that I'm not alone in this. My wife is also a published novelist, and so our kids have a very real idea about what writing books is, and have very real models for attempting to live a creative life, and I think that's very healthy for them as well. There are writers who get rich. There are a lot fewer rich writers than rich lawyers. You know, if the goal was to be rich and have, fancy cars, then really I would have stuck with legal practice. That's the way to do it. And I do get paid. I like getting paid. That's a nice thing, right? Frankly, if I got zero paid, I don't know if I could keep it up. Why is that? I don't know. Maybe the money is just sort of an indicator that the other things are out there, that I'm having success. People, if I'm getting checks, I know people are reading the books. I know there are more people out there who are encountering my ideas, and who maybe after I'm dead will want to write their graduate paper on, their thesis on whatever, Dave Butler's interpretation of Isaiah 11 as embodied in this novel. But it isn't about the money. It is not about getting rich.
That's fine. I don't think that any of the writers that are famous today, from J.K. Rowling onwards, they never thought about becoming rich. They just had something inside. It was an idea, a spark, and they decided to make something out of it. So that's something amazing about expressing yourself and coming out with all these stories that are here in our mind. It's just, how do we come up with all this? And it's true that you remember those personages, because for like 2 or 3 years, or maybe 4 or 5 years after writing my novel, I could, because it was based in Norwich, which is not so far from here, I could go to Norwich, to certain areas, and say, this is where David and Sophie first kissed. This is when they met. This is when... I'm like, wait, this has never happened. I imagine the Norwich with a lot of changes, and sometimes I would drive there and think, okay, this is where there's a Bernini Bridge and all this stuff. And it's all because I have built an entire world inside my mind. It was, and I'm probably going to stay there because I never have the courage to publish my novel, because there are a few structural issues that I just cannot be bothered to address. But you did all the work with your stuff, and I call it stuff because speaking fast, you don't come up with really selective words, and there's not even my language. Come tu sai bene, as you well.
Come io so bene.
Come io so bene. As you guys don't know, but David is also fluent in Italian, and we met in Italy in 1993, in May 93.
Yeah, good memory. Yep.
Yeah, so that's as many years. I don't want to do the maths, because then you will know my age, and that's not allowed. But here we go. Let's pretend that in between my audience today, among these people that are listening with interest, there is somebody who say, I always wanted to write a novel because it's going to make me so happy. I finally done it. It makes me feel amazing. You love doing it, and this person wants to do it. And do you have any tips or hints for this person?
Yeah, actually, maybe tips and also exhortations. So here's a very common misconception that I see among writers early in their career, but also writers who are well along in their career. We'll still talk about something, this thing, and say silly things about it. So when you are a writer, almost certainly, it is not a job. Even if you have a publisher and an editor, it is not a job. You don't work for the editor. It is writing a novel or writing a short story is an entrepreneurial act. It makes you a small business person. And so when you're thinking about, okay, what do I do beyond just the fact of writing, but also even in the writing, because what you're going to do with the story after it is done may impact what you want to put in the story, right? The question is not what will my boss think, what my boss like. The question is, I am the CEO and the sole owner. I'm the shareholder. I'm also the head of marketing, and I'm the head of manufacturing. I produce these books, and I'm the head of sales, and right, I'm all of those things. And I'm the poor guy working on the factory line making it. I'm everybody. Okay. With all of those hats on, what should I write? Who should I approach? When you approach a publisher, you're not applying for a job. You are a CEO approaching a potential joint venture partner and considering whether you want to have a joint venture with that person. And that's true when you approach an agent, and it's true when you go to, if you end up deciding you're going to publish in the indie space and you want to engage someone to do layout or cover or marketing, right? You're the owner, so you gotta, I would say from the start, think like you're the owner, okay? And you know what, if that feels foreign to you, and by the way, to many of us it does, although increasingly we have a gig economy, people are becoming self-employed again in recent years, it wouldn't hurt to maybe even read a couple of books about entrepreneurialism to kind of think, what does that mean that I own the business? What kind of decisions do I have to make? But brand, you own your brand, right? Who you work with is up to you. So that's thing one. I have two more things. Here's the second thing I would say. I'm not sure I believe in writer's block as such, but I do think it's hard to get started. Some people can just turn on a spigot of creativity and it goes. Not me. Especially starting a novel, it takes a little bit of kind of work and getting in the mind frame. So I think what I find very helpful is to try to live a creative life, to do lots of things that are creative so that I'm in the mode as often as possible of being creative. And that means having creative hobbies like playing games and modeling and making other kinds of art, painting. And it means engaging creatively with my kids. And it means when I don't have a big novel project that I'm currently working on for a deadline, it means writing other things. So I'm really a novelist, but I think I wrote something like 6 or 7 short stories last year. I'm writing a short story right now because, and there are other reasons, but one of the reasons I said yes when the editor approached me is because, good, this will keep my hand in writing. I am still writing, even though I'm not at the moment writing a novel. So that when I turn around and go to start the novel, the car it's a warmer start. The engine is still warm, right? So I would say thing two, try to live a creative life. Do as many creative things as you can beyond what you actually view as your main creative endeavor. And there are many other things I would say, but let me say one last thing. Thing number 3, okay? This actually connects to things we said earlier. This is not deliberate, but this is good. It's come around. Especially in writing, I've seen new ways to publish develop. And I have friends who have turned to writing in those new ways to publish and have made a living. They make a living. They make significantly more money than I do. But when they are writing to the market, when they're using Amazon to identify new micro genres of writing, and they're kind of dumb genres, harem novels or lit RPG is a strange kind of fantasy genre where your main character gets transported into her game and becomes her game character. They're writing them fast. They're bad. And basically, this is not true of all of them, but basically these guys have found a way to write and make money. And so they're doing it. Now, I don't object to anybody making money. This is not illegal. They're not hurting people. But I don't think they're adding anything to the culture. I think they're just throwing out a bunch of junk. And I think that there is virtually no way that any of them will be remembered or leave an impact. And I think some of these guys I know actually dislike their readers. They have a relationship where they're writing something that for them psychically is the equivalent of pornography, and they don't like it, and they don't like people who would read it. They would never read this stuff themselves. And I think that's a soul destroying act, and I think it's an act that surrenders, that walks away from, that abdicates from the more serious parts of your responsibility as an artist. So I would say this, write things that are beautiful, write the things that only you could write things that are non-fungible, write the poetry or paint the paintings that somebody else 20 years after you're dead will say, well, that has to be by Franz Sidney. She's the only one who wrote like that, right? That was exactly how, she captured shadow or, captured texture on the canvas, or whatever. Sometimes writing the thing that is non-fungible means that you don't sell it, or you don't sell it as well. And so I would urge you to make that choice anyway. Don't write the big, gross, money-making novel. Write the delicate, strange thing that the universe has uniquely given to you and to your care to write.
Thank you. That was very nice. And also, I have interviewed before another writer. It was not novels. And there was so much advice, and you added so many layers to this advice, because of course in novels you also have this message. And I think it's great. There are some books that you can read. I know people, they read tons of books every week. They read them just like when you go to McDonald's, they consume them and then they forget. And there are other books that you want to read over and over again, and there has to be a reason why you are attracted to these books. And it's nice to think, I want to create a piece of art that people want to go back to, and it's not forgotten after being consumed. So in that way, I frame your work as in this effort to really connect yourself to your public, to your audience. You are doing something that they're going to enjoy, and it's reciprocal, so you mutually enjoy being in connection with one another. So I would imagine if you were to meet your readers, you will be able to have a rather pleasant conversation, because you know what you're talking about and why you did this and why you did that. And yes, I absolutely agree with being serious about it. It's also very good for your mental health, because it's so liberating and it creates a new reality. And I think that's correct, what you were saying about not writing for the money. And a few years ago, I was in a lot of writers' groups. I'm still there, but I'm just not very active. Life happens. And sometimes you had one of these people posting in the forum and they say, I would love to write a book. What topics could I write about? I was like, right, I think it's completely the opposite. You should have a story that is bursting out of you, a message that wants to come out, and then you think, oh, I should write a book. And these people had no idea, and they just, I wanted to sell it. What do I have to do for marketing? They hadn't even written a book. They didn't have anything to tell to anyone. And I felt a little bit sad, because I think they missed the beauty of writing, which is like a cathartic experience. You're purging yourself from lots of stuff. It comes out, it takes a new form, and you're surprised by these characters playing their own story. I mean, for me, it was the way.
Yeah, and it's revelatory, right? I mean, it gives you clarity over what you were thinking inside. I believe in the muse. I think that real art doesn't come out of your conscious mind. It's not just craft. It comes out of somewhere else. And it's also social. It's connecting. I have absolutely met many of my readers, and I have always liked them. I've never met one of my readers and thought, oh, that guy's a jerk.
That would be so bad.
That's great.
Anyway, thank you, Dave, for being with us today. We hope to be hearing from you again, and thank you everyone for listening to Create with Franz. In the past episode we talked about bullying. Today we're talking about books and how books can help you to be really happy as a business person. You can be even doing 4 different jobs. And next week, we're going to interview a woman called Judy Butler, and she's not related, and she's going to talk about death and how we prepare for death by making a will and avoiding in that way a lot of problems to the people who are left on the earth. So we're going to really big topics. I hope you guys are going to be tuning in to listen to Create with Franz. Thank you so much for this, and you take care. Bye, Dave.
Thanks, Franz.
You have listened to Create with Franz Sidney.